Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mind Version. I'm your host, Wan, and today we are going to explore empathetic AI, a topic that blends technology, psychology, and emotional intelligence. Our guest today is Dr. Yoon Lee, a researcher exploring how AI can not only interact with us, but also can understand us on an emotional level. So Yoon, thank you for joining us again. For those who were just tuning in now, could you briefly introduce yourself and your research interests?
Hi, so I'm glad to be back. My name is Yoon Lee. I'm a cognitive psychologist who study the mind of both human and AI. I'm currently in Seoul National University as a postdoc researcher. My research focuses on how we can build AI systems that can communicate in more empathic, human-centered ways, especially in contexts like social support or peer support or mental health. What really sparked my interest was this question. If we are already building intelligent systems or smart ones, why not also make them emotionally intelligent? Could those systems help people understand each other better or communicate more empathically? In psychology, we know that empathy isn't just something you are born with, it's a skill you can actually train, you can learn over time. So I started wondering what if AI could help practice empathy too, not replace human connection, but support it. So that's the kind of future I'm interested in shaping at this point.
Thanks. Speaking of your research interests, so empathetic AI, like training AI to be more empathetic, or AI helping us to be more empathetic. Empathetic AI, the term itself, empathetic AI, can be a bit confusing because AI is known not to have minds. So, like AI is just a technology made up on algorithms, but how can they be empathetic? So, what exactly does empathetic mean? And does this really work in technology like AI systems or so? I wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah, that's a great question and very frequently asked question. You're right. AI doesn't have a mind or emotions. So when we talk about empathetic AI or empathic AI, we are not saying that the AI feels empathy. And I want to emphasize the word feels at this point. We're saying it can respond in ways that people perceive as empathic. The goal isn't to replace human care or human emotion, but to augment it, extending access, reducing burnout, and offering support where human time and attention are limited and actually valuable. And that perceived empathy can be incredibly valuable in real world settings. For example, in mental health care, these systems could help reduce the emotional burden on human therapists by handling routine check ins or mood tracking or low risk supportive conversations. So that frees up counselors to focus on more complex cases while still providing consistent emotional support to more people. Being empathetic also means recognizing someone's emotional state and responding in a way that shows understanding, care, or validation. And it's also both cognitive and simply understanding what someone is feeling, and emotional, acknowledging that feeling in a meaningful way. And cognitive and emotional empathy don't always need to happen simultaneously. It can be independent of each other. And that's what we explored in a recent study and a technique I developed called chain of empathy prompting. Do you want me to dig into this more about this?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So if you're really into, current trends in large language models and AI, you might be interested in this. So it's a very recent project that we did. But in order to build this, I've been working on this ever since I don't know, like 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
So the whole motivation was that instead of just having these models to generate a very, general response. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, that's too bad to the user. We structured these large language models, I would just say AI from this point, that AI's behavior using principles from psychotherapy, especially from like famous approaches like cognitive behavior therapy, also called CBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, also called the DBT. These therapy models and techniques are widely used by practitioners, psychiatrists, and counselors, and found very effective to kind of regulate and extreme emotions
Yeah.
of clients. And so the idea is to break these messages and responses generated the counseling chatbot or counseling AI into 3 key steps. So basically making the model to kind of think step by step before generating these responses. So the first step is that the AI identifies the user's emotion. So what is the exact emotion the client is, feeling at this stage? So whether it's frustration, sadness, anxiety, or something else. And then it infers the context behind that emotion. So making sense of what might have caused it, almost like how a therapist would reflect on both feelings and situations. Is it coming from recent dispute with a coworker? Is it coming from the family issue? Or is it coming from any other issues that has to do with that specific situation and emotion? And finally, it generates a response that acknowledges the emotion and offers support, whether that's, emotional validation or practical advice, depending on the user's need. So we found that this kind of structured prompting or a way of modeling, the model to kind of think step by step before generating these messages, what we call the chain of empathy or COE in short terms, leads to responses that people rate as significantly more empathic. It works because it mirrors how human counselors respond, but not just reacting to surface level words, but also like reasoning through the user's emotional state and situation. And I'm actually happy to say that it's becoming very, very relevant concept, especially in the era of ChatGPT and how people are using this model to augment their empathy and communication skills. And also this paper was featured in a very popular data science blog. So that was really exciting. Anyway, so no, AI doesn't feel empathy, but when guided properly, and when we kind of guide the model to think step by step, it can communicate in ways that make people feel heard, validated, and supported. And that's a very powerful step forward.
Yeah, I really think that this chain of empathy, like framework or a step-by-step routine is really important because like sometimes I do feel that AI is just answering and responding to my like, emotional hardness based on some algorithms, which is really structured. Like, oh, did you feel like that? I'm so sorry to hear that, which is really
Yeah.
typical. And I really just don't feel that they're really into and really are concerned about my like current stage at that point. But based on this chain of empathy framework, I would say framework, they are just like digging deep into why did I feel this and what is the like related factors about my current mental state, and then how can I do it? What other like clinical things and like some other helpful stages that I can go through to relieve my stress and get a better mental state like that. So yeah, I do feel that a chain of empathy and AI isn't just a tool, but something that could provide real emotional support for someone who is stressed or lonely at that point. And I bet empathetic AI was developed based on some key factors that makes us feel understood. So based on your studies, Yoon, what were the key factors that played a role here?
Yeah, that's also an important question because even though AI doesn't feel, people still respond to it emotionally. And so the real question becomes what makes people feel that an AI understands them? In our recent projects, another recent project that I did with actually UT Austin, and while I was visiting researcher at the UT Austin, and it was a collaboration project with Microsoft. And we wanted to find out whether at what level that these models are generating responses perceived to be empathic when evaluated by people. And we found that these models are capable of generating responses that enough to be perceived by people, not just ChatGPT, but also other open source models like Llama too. But this was more focused on linguistic factors, say that specific words or linguistic cue that these models use can predict the self-report empathy ratings from people. And what was interesting is that like ChatGPT and Llama and Mistral is also a open source LLM that was developed by a company based in France. And these models use different patterns of linguistic cues. Like ChatGPT could use more formal and very general language, while Llama uses more casual and more, I would say, humorous. Um,
Oh,
and a lot of emojis, other models. And Mistral was rated lowest in its perceived empathy because it would generate more succinct and short response compared to
oh.
other. So yeah, so we were able to find these distinct patterns, distinct linguistic patterns that these models generate, and how such linguistic patterns can predict how people will rate perceived empathy. And this was fun project. Um, in one of our other recent projects, and we explored whether LLMs could generate not just text, but also simulate nonverbal cues in when it's used as a cognitive model of a robot. And when I say robot, it's an actual robot, like the Pepper and the humanoid robot,
Mhm.
because what we see the robots are just the hardware, just plastic. But
Yeah.
yeah, what we need to model is basically the brain of it, the mind of it. So I would say mechanical mind. Um, so what's more important is we need to like design how these robots that can talk to people, that interact verbally with people, use socially appropriate phrases or can move their arms or move their, body parts to convey a very nice gestures or empathic gestures
Mm.
when in real time. And actually you can use the LLMs to design these gestures or the timing and or changes in tone that resembles how humans express empathy. And what we found was pretty surprising. Even subtle or simulated nonverbal behaviors significantly increased how empathic the AI was perceived to be. And it shows that empathy isn't just about the words, it's the whole experience, how something is communicated. And and also this was a pre-GPT era, but
Oh.
the pattern repeats is that we also looked at how the chatbot's appearance and how the relationship style of that specific user influence the trust in these chatbots. So have you ever heard about like relationship styles or attachment styles in
Oh,
psychology?
yeah.
Yeah.
Stable
So
attachment like that.
yeah. So you know how people have like different attachment style when it comes to a
Mhm.
social relationship. Some people more dependent on the others, some people more independent. And so when the bot kind of adapted a friendly, a peer-like tone and had a warm appearance, we found that users were much more likely to trust it and feel emotionally connected. But when it felt too cold or like the intention state is really shallow, the interaction stayed
Yeah.
really shallow and showing the low trust levels. I guess to wrap it up, it's just that I keep saying this is that these studies suggest that even AI empathy, not just human empathy, but AI empathy isn't just one thing. It's a layered experience. So it's about how the system looks or sounds or reacts or even relates to us. So the more these cues are social cues, I say, are aligned with how humans express care and attention, the more likely we are to feel understood and even by a machine, or even knowing that it's just a machine. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. And it's amazing to think about like how much a machine can convey with something as simple as a tone or appearance or gestures. It is really a multifaceted how, yeah, it is a multifaceted picture, yeah, on AI empathy. So with all these advancements and researches, and are there any drawbacks of using empathetic AI? So like it's getting a bit more humanized and more realistic so that people can actually some would rely on it. So
Mm.
what aspects still needs to be improved or what ethical issues should we be aware of at this point?
Yeah, more and more people are be able to use these generative AIs that generate text and images or videos. They can actually fool our bare eyes. It's really getting really harder and really challenging to discern whether it's really a human made or AI generated. And while it's very impressive how natural these systems are becoming, but at the same time, it also raises some real concerns, like you said. So one big issue I think is that when AI sounds empathic, and people may assume it understands them and can even help a therapist would. But I would say, and many other psychologists agree that this could be dangerous. When we say dangerous, it's not. It's we're saying that all the other apps are dangerous. It's just that these apps that are mimicking and displaying
Mm.
therapy or their professional therapies, that's dangerous, especially if it has human-like features, the faces and movements or human-like shape. So for example, you may heard of it, apps like Replica or Character AI are being used by people to talk about deeply personal and emotional issues. Actually, there's a whole Reddit community or subreddit. It's called ChatGPT or GPT Therapist. Yeah, people just like using GPT as a replacement of therapist. But I think you can use it as a replacement, but just you shouldn't rely on it as a replacement of a professional help. And because at certain stage, if it's deemed that someone really needs a professional help, you should really seek for, I don't know, maybe a doctor or a psychiatrist. Anyway, so some users even start seeing the chatbot as a friend or a therapist, and it's really easy to just talk to them compared rather than your close friend, a close
Yeah.
good friend, let's say. So actually, the American Psychological Association, we call it APA, has actually issued a warnings about this, cautioning against relying on AI chatbots for mental health advice or emotional diagnosis. And these systems can give false reassurance or even harmful suggestions, and users might not realize the limits. Sometimes they actually display and say that we will diagnose what's going on with your
Yeah.
issues if it's not used with actual human therapists. Be warned that you shouldn't use it as a replacement of a medical diagnosis, medical care. Anyway, I think another issue is transparency. When a chatbot or these ChatGPT like generated AI presents itself as a caring or supportive, is it also collecting, data? Is
Scary.
yeah, yeah, it is actually. And is it promoting a product or service while pretending to empathize with you. If we blur the line between real empathy and artificial performance or artificial empathy, I'd say, we risk this manipulation. So while empathic AI has like huge potential, and it's sometimes used, the word itself can be misleading to people, especially for in the context of emotional support. We need to be very clear that it's not a replacement for human relationships or trained care. And as designers or researchers or developers, I say we have a responsibility to make that line very visible.
Yeah, so really do feel that it's definitely a delicate balance. Like we have to know there should be some like guidelines that were made by some experts, but like
Mhm.
even though there are some guidelines, we should always be aware of that transparency issue, which I was really surprised of. Let's zoom it out a bit. In what context do you see this empathic AI or empathetic AI should be used or will be used in the future? As you've mentioned before, psychology and technology are becoming increasingly intertwined, and AI could have applications in daily lives too. So, in your opinion, what kinds of applied research we be doing to ensure these systems are as helpful as possible?
Yeah, also a great question. And I think this is where things get really exciting is that I see like empathic AI being, or just AI in general, is being used a wide range of everyday contexts, like not just in mental health care, but also like in education or caregiving, customer service, and even daily health management. While we previously mentioned like the scary part of the AI,
Yeah.
I want to share like some other parts, like more positive side. For example, there's been a recent progress in using AI as a self-health monitoring tool. You can use them to help yourself, or it could help people track symptoms, like specific medical symptoms, understand the patterns of your daily experience of extreme emotions, or even flag early signs of stress or burnout. And some symptoms can even help users navigate confusing medical bills or find more affordable care options, which reduces stress and financial burden. And for these symptoms to be truly helpful, we need more like applied psychological research. And we need to study how people react to these AI support in everyday life and how people actually find a way to make these systems more useful. And also, at the same time, we should investigate the long-term outcomes. We don't know yet how the use or psychological impact of these generative AIs are bringing what these are bringing to our lives yet. So does it actually reduce anxiety or improve self-management over time, or really help us keep track of our health, and whether it's like mental health or physical health? Yeah, actually, I would say it requires a lot of efforts and a lot of time, and especially because empathy itself is really powerful and is what everybody wants, but it can be expressed, it can be perceived in a very different way depending on context and culture. Actually, sometimes people need comfort, and sometimes they need like clear action, and we could use many tools to ask those nuanced questions and to design AI that can respond appropriately and make it adapt to various diverse situations. I guess to wrap it up, so the goal, I'd say, isn't just to make the AI sound human, like I said repeatedly, but it's also to make it meaningfully supportive in ways that really fit into people's lives. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge area with so much potential. We still have a lot of things to study on and on. So, like, I'm really excited to see how this field develops. Like, before we wrap up, are there anything else you'd like to add about the future of empathetic AI and the research that's shaping it?
Yeah, in more of a AI perspective, I think we're entering a really transformative era, what some are calling the age of AI agents, that these AIs are not just simple tools, but also it can make a decisions and automate some things that we previously thought that AI couldn't do, only human can do, but it's happening, it's doing it.
Yeah.
So with this very rapid advancement of generative AI, we are no longer just interacting with static systems. We are beginning to see autonomous agents that can, I would say, plan, act, and even carry out tasks on our behalf across different platforms. And as more parts of our lives become automated, whether it's like scheduling or healthcare or even receiving emotional or social support, but as more of these systems enter everyday life, especially managing our health or being educated or receiving or providing caregiving, we need to ask what kind of support do people actually need. And I think we should have more conversations and more discussions about what, in very diverse situations, how we could leverage this insights from people, like what they need, what in specific help they need. We can leverage that insights into building these AI agents and define what specific support should be delivered. Yeah. I would say we have a lot of definitions and a lot to say about what empathy is and what it looks like and what it should be. But I think we should just keep in mind that it's just in the goal itself, but it should be the bridge to better support. Yeah.
Yeah. It was an incredible insight, Yoon. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. So this is an exciting space, and we'll definitely should and be keeping an eye on how empathetic AI evolves in the future. So in our next episode, we are going to cover how AI can encourage us to become a better me. So don't forget to be tuned in for more discussions on the intersection of psychology and technology. And until then, take care and stay curious.